Chapter 15. Establishing Dominance. As the pseudo-infernals emerged from dimensional rifts and set foot upon the soil of the human world, their presence heralded a wave of devastation and death, unlike anything the world had ever seen. Wherever they tread, life withered and decayed, the very essence of vitality drained from the earth itself. In their wake, fields turned barren and crops wilted, their once vibrant colors fading to a sickly gray. Forests stood silent and still, the once teeming wildlife reduced to lifeless husks, scattered upon the forest floor. Rivers ran dry and lakes turned stagnant, their waters choked with the rotting remains of fish and other aquatic creatures. But it was not just the flora and fauna of the natural world that fell victim to the pseudo-infernal's insatiable hunger. Humans, too, felt the chilling touch of death upon their flesh. Their bodies drained of vitality until they resembled nothing more than lifeless mummies, their eyes hollow and vacant, their once joyful voices silenced forever. As the pseudo-infernals roamed the land, devouring all in their path, they left a trail of destruction and despair in their wake. Villages lay abandoned, their inhabitants fleeing in terror from the approaching darkness. Cities became ghost towns, their streets empty and silent, the echoes of human civilization fading into oblivion. With each passing moment, the world grew darker and more desolate, the very fabric of reality unraveling at the seams as the pseudo-infernals unleashed their terrible power upon the unsuspecting earth. And as they continued their relentless march of destruction, it seemed as though nothing could stand in their way. Not even the mightiest warriors or the most powerful of magics. One by one they sensed their next targets and set off to consume the most vibrant life they could find. Pahang, Malaysia. As the students of the Runaviji school gathered in the tranquil forest clearing, a sense of calm enveloped them. The dappled sunlight, filtering through the canopy above, casting a warm glow upon the verdant foliage below. But their peaceful reverie was shattered in an instant, as a rip in the fabric of reality tore open with violent force, splitting the air with crackling energy. From the swirling vortex of darkness that unfurled like a gaping maw, a monstrous entity emerged, its twisted form silhouetted against the backdrop of the forest. As it stepped forth from the dimensional rift, the ground beneath it trembled with the weight of its presence, the air crackling with dark energy as it exerted its dominance over the natural world. The creature, known as a halpu, was a terrifying amalgamation of dragonfly and serpent. Its body a twisted mass of insectoid wings and serpentine coils that writhed and twisted with malevolent intent. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light as it surveyed its surroundings, its gaze filled with a predatory hunger that sent shivers down the spines of all who beheld it. As the halpu unfurled its wings and extended its clawed appendages, a deafening roar echoed through the forest, the sound reverberating through the trees like a thunderclap. With each beat of its massive wings, the air shimmered and rippled with dark energy, the very essence of the forest itself recoiling in terror from the monstrous intruder. For the students of the Runaviji school, standing face to face with the embodiment of pure evil, there was no denying the gravity of the situation. With their hearts pounding in their chests, they knew that they faced a threat unlike any they'd ever encountered. A threat that would test their strength, their courage, and their will to survive. And as they stood ready to confront the darkness that threatened to consume them, they knew that they would stop at nothing to protect their home, their school, and all that they held dear from the forces of evil that lurked in the shadows. As one of the students stepped forward, their hands raised in a gesture of arcane power, the air crackled with anticipation, a shimmering aura of magic enveloping them like a protective shield. But before they could utter a single incantation, the halpu sprang into action. With lightning speed, its wings beating with a thunderous roar, as it blitzed past the hapless student in the blink of an eye. In an instant, the forest was filled with the sickening sound of metal meeting flesh, the metallic clang of a Halpool's razor-sharp claws slicing through the air like a scythe. The student's head was torn from their shoulders with brutal efficiency, their lifeless bodies standing for a moment in shock, before crumbling to the ground in a heap. Horror washed over the remaining students like a tidal wave as they watched in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process the grisly scene unfolding before them. The fallen student's headless form stood as a grim testament to the merciless power of the Halpool, a silent reminder of the brutal reality of the situation they now found themselves in. With the triumphant roar that shook the very foundations of the forest, the Halpool tossed the severed head aside with contempt, its eyes blazing with a fierce determination as it extended its wings in a challenge to the terrified onlookers. In that moment, the creature seemed to radiate an aura of pure malevolence, its monstrous form a grotesque mockery of the natural world. For the remaining students standing face to face with this creature, there was no denying the gravity of the situation. "Cast protective barriers, now!" Master Limp screams. Snapping the other mages out of their panic, the entire area around them becomes entombed in the magical glow of defensive magic. As the mages unleashed a barrage of elemental spells upon Halpool, the creature moved with a speed and agility that defied comprehension, evading their attacks with uncanny precision. Fireballs erupted from the palms of their hands, streaking through the air like meteors, only to be effortlessly dodged by the nimble creature's lightning-fast reflexes. Bolts of lightning crackled and sizzled as they arced towards a Halpool, their jagged tendrils of electricity lashing out with deadly intent. But the creature danced effortlessly between the strands of energy, its wings beating with a blur as it darted and weaved through the air like a shadow. Even the earth itself seemed to rise up against a Halpool, as the mages called upon the very elements to aid them in their battle. Rocks and boulders hurtled towards the creature with bone-shaking force, the ground beneath its feet trembling with the impact of their onslaught. But a Halpool simply laughed in the face of their efforts, its serpentine form twisting and contorting with an unnatural grace as it danced between the flying debris. With each failed attack, the mages' frustration grew, their confidence waning with each passing moment. Despite their best efforts, they found themselves unable to land a single blow against the elusive creature, their spells fizzling out into nothingness as the Halpool continued to evade their every move. For the mages, standing face to face with the relentless onslaught of the Halpool, there was no denying that their chances of victory seemed to slip further and further away, their hopes of defeating the creature fading like wisps of smoke in the wind. Muskegon, Florida. Damon Rodnovich, a towering figure of muscle and raw power, leaned over the hood of his vintage muscle car. His broad shoulders strained against the fabric of his grease-stained tank top, the sleeves stretched to their limits by the sheer mass of his arms. Thick veins snaked across his bulging biceps, pulsing with every movement as he worked tirelessly beneath the scorching sun. His chest was adorned with a tangled web of tattoos, each one a testament to his rugged masculinity and untamed spirit. His dark hair was cropped short in a rugged buzz cut, the stubble of his beard framing a chiseled jawline that spoke of countless battles fought and won. As he crouched down to inspect the engine, his muscles rippled with power, the veins in his neck bulging with the exertion of his efforts. His hands, calloused and roughed from years of manual labor, moved with a precision and skill born of a lifetime spent tinkering with engines and machinery. Surrounding him, the yard was a chaotic jumble of junk and discarded parts, the detritus of countless automotive projects scattered haphazardly across the ground. Old tires leaned against rusted car frames, while engine blocks lay abandoned beneath a layer of dust and grime. Yet amid the clutter, Damon moved with the grace and confidence of a predator in his element. With a deafening roar that shattered the tranquility of Damon Rodnovich's yard, A rip in the fabric of reality tore open with a violent force, splitting the air with crackling energy. From the swirling vortex of darkness that unfurled like a gaping maw, another worldly entity emerged, its monstrous form silhouetted against the blazing sun. As the dimensional rift spat forth its nightmarish inhabitant, the ground beneath Damon's feet trembled with the impact, sending a shockwave rippling through the yard. Dust and debris were kicked up in a swirling frenzy, obscuring the intruder's grotesque form as it materialized before him. Emerging from the swirling darkness, the pseudo-inferno loomed over Damon like a living nightmare, its twisted features contorted into a grotesque parody of life. Its body was a twisted mass of tentacles and claws, each appendage pulsing with an otherworldly energy that crackled and sparked malevolent intent. Each of Kodalaku's tentacles has dozens of circular suckers, each containing hundreds of needle-like teeth. Upon contact, the suckers latch onto any surface and deliver lethal doses of a fast-acting neurotoxin into the victim. Through these mouth parts, the cephalopodon monstrosity can also actively feed off both the blood of its prey and the vitality contained therein. With a guttural snarl that would send shivers down any normal man's spine, the pseudo-infernal fixed its gaze upon him, its eyes glowing with an unholy light that pierced the darkness like twin beacons of death. In that moment, Damon felt a chill run down his spine, a primal instinct warning him of the imminent danger that lurked before him. As the pseudo-infernal took a menacing step forward, its very presence seemed to warp and distort the world around it, casting a shadow of fear and despair over Damon's yard. With each movement, the air crackled with dark energy, the very essence of the world itself recoiling in terror from the monstrous intruder. Despite this horrific scene, there's not fear on the face of Rodnovich. Instead, annoyance and confusion are painted across the muscular behemoth's features. "Who the fuck are you?" he growls. With a deafening roar that echoed through the yard, Kodalaku, the pseudo-infernal, unleashed a surge of otherworldly power, extending its writhing tentacles and hornet wings in a display of monstrous strength. The air crackled with dark energy as the creature exerted its dominance, a palpable aura of menace emanating from its twisted form. But Rodnovich, unfazed by the creature's display of power, moved with lightning speed. His muscles coiled like steel springs as he darted behind Kodalaku with the agility of a panther. In one fluid motion, he planted a foot firmly in the creature's back, using its own momentum against it as he yanked with all of his might. With a sickening tear, one of Kodalaku's hornet wings was ripped from its body, torn asunder by the sheer force of Rodnovich's strength. The creature let out a deafening screech of agony, its monstrous form convulsing in pain as it writhed beneath Rodnovich's boot. "Ain't the first time I ripped the wings off a bug," Rodnovich says with a grin, tossing the wing aside. Kodalaku leaps back, ichor leaking from the wound. "So, bug thing with tentacles and shit. Not sure I know what the fuck you're supposed to be. You a demon or something?" Kodalaku growls, its voice insectine and not well practiced yet. "Inferni." Inferni. Rodnovich scratches his chin and looks up to the sky for a moment, deep in thought. "Nah, I got nothing." As the pseudo-infernal recoiled from the searing pain of having its hornet wing torn off, it lashed out with a fury born of desperation. Its tentacles thrashed wildly through the air, whipping back and forth with deadly precision as it sought to overwhelm Rodnovich with its otherworldly strength. But Rodnovich, undeterred by the creature's frenzied assault, moved with the fluid grace of a seasoned fighter, ducking and weaving with preternatural speed as he evaded each strike with ease. With muscles honed by years of hard labor and intense training, he danced around Kodalaku's flailing tentacles with inhuman agility, his movements a symphony of calculated precision and raw power. With a grunt of exertion, Radovich seized one of Kolokyu's thrashing tentacles in his powerful grip, wrenching it with all of his might as he tore it from the creature's writhing form. The pseudo-infernal let out a deafening shriek of agony, its monstrous features contorted in pain as it staggered backwards, its defenses crumbling beneath the relentless onslaught of Radnovich's assault. Emboldened by his success, Radnovich pressed his advantage, closing in on Kotolokyu with a relentless barrage of strikes and blows. With each punch and kick, he chipped away at the creature's defenses, his movements fueled by a primal fury that burned within him like a raging inferno. Radnovich continues to evade the wild lashing of Kotolokyu's tentacles, sidestepping and ducking whenever appropriate. The creature attacks faster and faster, its movements becoming a blur. Radnovich continues to evade, moving closer to the pseudo-infernal, until he is able to deliver a combo of lightning-fast jabs to the creature's body. Kotolokyu manages to block the attack with its tentacles, but the tissue is soft and unable to fully absorb the blows. Kotolokyu skids backward, deep indentations marking the creature's flesh. With incredible flexibility, Kotolokyu extends its stinger and attempts to stab Radnovich in the chest by going between its own legs. The man immediately traps the stinger between his armpit and chest, holding it firmly. Kotolokyu squirms to free itself, but Radnovich quickly slashes a hand down through the creature's abdomen, severing it in a spraying of black gore. Focusing its dark energy, Kotolokyu begins to regenerate the damage done to its body. A low, guttural noise emanates from Kotolokyu's mangled form. The sound sends a shiver down Radnovich's spine, and he steps back, wary of what might come next. Before his eyes, Kotolokyu's horrific regeneration begins. The severed wing, lying limp and useless, starts to twitch. Black tendrils of dark energy seep from the wound, weaving themselves together in a grotesque tapestry of flesh and sinew. The wing pulsates, growing and stretching, the membrane reforming with an eerie luminescence. In moments, the wing is whole once more, extending out as if testing its newfound strength. Radnovich watches in grim fascination as the torn abdomen undergoes a similar transformation. The ragged edges of the wound bubble and churn, black ichor flowing like molten lava. The torn flesh knits itself back together layer by layer, the internal organs reconstituting with sickening, slurping sounds. The abdomen swells and contracts, expelling the last of the damaged tissue and replacing it with fresh, resilient flesh. The tentacles, some of which had been severed and others shredded, begin their own grotesque dance of regeneration. Each tentacle's base writhes, dark energy spiraling out from the stumps. The tips of the severed tentacles sprout new suckers, the flesh extending and elongating with a rapid, unsettling fluidity. Radnovich can see the intricate patterns of blue rings appearing, glowing with a renewed deadly brilliance. As the tentacles regrow, they stretch and curl, testing their flexibility and strength. The suckers pop into place with wet, suctioning sounds, each one regaining its venomous potency. Kotolokyu's body, once a ruin of combat, now appears whole, and even more menacing than before. The stinger, broken and blunted, vibrates with dark energy. The chitinous shell splits and reforms, new segments pushing out the old, cracked pieces. The stinger elongates, the tip sharpening to a lethal point once more. It glistens with the fresh coating of venom, ready to deliver its paralyzing payload. "High-speed regeneration," Radnovich mutters. "That's kind of unfair." "Oh well. It just means I get to rip you apart all over again." Kotolokyu growls in anger and frustration, waves of black energy radiate out from the creature's form. The pseudo-infernal launches itself towards Radnovich, spinning its tentacles like propeller blades. The big man plants his feet and catches two of the tentacles, but is repeatedly struck across the face by the others before Kotelakue kicks him in the chest with both feet. The blow knocks Rodnovich backwards, sending him crashing against the side of a rusted pickup truck. "You're tough," Rodnovich coughs. "But do you have the stamina to keep regenerating?" he asks, still holding the two now severed tentacles in his hands. With lightning speed, it lashed out with one of its remaining tentacles, wrapping it around Rodnovich's throat with a vice-like grip that threatened to crush the life from him. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still as Rodnovich found himself locked in a deadly embrace with the creature that had threatened to devour his home and everything he held dear. With every ounce of strength he possessed, he fought against the suffocating pressure of Kotelakue's tentacle, his vision swimming with darkness as he struggled to draw breath. But even as his strength waned and his vision dimmed, Rodnovich refused to surrender to the darkness that threatened to consume him. With a primal roar of defiance, he summoned one final surge of energy, channeling the raw power of his rage into one devastating blow. With a sickening crunch, Rodnovich's fist collided with Kotelakue's twisted face, sending the creature reeling backwards with a deafening roar of pain. As it staggered and stumbled, its grip loosened on Rodnovich's throat, allowing him to break free from its suffocating embrace. A wave of dizziness washed over him. Almost immediately, Rodnovich feels a searing pain radiate from the wound, followed by a numbness that begins to spread rapidly through his arm. The toxin works swiftly, disrupting his nervous system. He staggers back, trying to shake off the poison, but the damage is already done. His breathing becomes labored, each inhale feeling like a struggle against an invisible weight pressing down on his chest. The muscles around his throat begin to constrict, making it increasingly difficult to draw in air. Panic sets in as he realizes his diaphragm is slowly being paralyzed by the toxin. A cold sweat breaks out across his forehead, the beads of perspiration standing out starkly against his skin as it pales. His body temperature fluctuates wildly, one moment feeling as if he's burning from within, the next shivering as if caught in an icy wind. His vision blurs and he feels dizzy, the world around him spinning as his body struggles to cope with the effects of the venom. The numbness spreads from his arm to his torso, creeping up his neck and into his face. His movements become jerky and uncoordinated, his muscles no longer responding properly to his commands. He tries to call out, but his voice is barely a whisper, his vocal cords paralyzed along with the rest of his respiratory system. Rodnovich's heart races, pounding erratically in his chest as the toxin interferes with his cardiac function. He feels a crushing pressure building in his chest, the irregular heartbeat, sending waves of pain through his body. His lips and fingertips turn a bluish hue, a sign of oxygen deprivation, as his body fights a losing battle to sustain itself. Despite the paralysis setting in, Rodnovich's mind remains agonizingly aware of his condition. He watches Kotelakue through a haze of pain and fear, the creature's glowing rings pulsating rhythmically, a macabre dance of death. "Poison?" Rodnovich whispers, his throat dry. "What a cowardly way to fight." Kotelakue has 8 flexible muscular tentacles that extend from its body. These tentacles are covered in suckers, each equipped with tiny venomous fangs that can deliver a potent neurotoxin. The tentacles are incredibly agile, capable of rapid whip-like movements that can ensnare and incapacitate prey in an instant. They are also prehensile, allowing Kotelakue to grasp and manipulate objects or hold onto surfaces with ease. The venom of the blue-ringed octopus is one of the most potent neurotoxins in the natural world. Kotelakue retains this deadly poison, which it can inject through its tentacles. The venom blocks sodium channels in nerve cells, causing paralysis and potentially fatal respiratory failure. The effects of the toxin are swift, starting with localized pain and numbness, followed by muscle weakness, difficulty breathing, and ultimately paralysis. This gives Kotelekyu a significant advantage in immobilizing and incapacitating its victims, making them easy prey. In addition to its venomous tentacles, Kotelekyu has a large retractable stinger located near its tail. This stinger, modeled after that of the Asian giant hornet, is capable of delivering a powerful venom that causes excruciating pain, tissue damage, and in some cases anaphylactic shock. The stinger allows Kotelekyu to deliver a secondary attack, injecting a different type of venom that compounds the effects of its neurotoxin, ensuring that its prey is thoroughly incapacitated. Kotelekyu is also equipped with a pair of large membranous wings from the genetic material and soul of the Asian giant hornet. These wings grant it the ability to fly, giving it a significant advantage in terms of mobility and hunting. Kotelekyu can soar through the air, rapidly closing the distance between itself and its target. The combination of tentacles, poison stinger, and wings makes Kotelekyu a versatile predator. It can attack from multiple angles, using its tentacles to ensnare and inject venom, its stinger for a powerful secondary attack, and its wings to maneuver quickly and unpredictably. With the ability to fly, Kotelekyu can navigate various terrains and environments, attacking from above or swooping down on unsuspecting prey. Its flight capability also allows it to evade potential threats with ease. The dual venoms, one neurotoxic from the octopus and one cytotoxic from the hornet, ensures that any creature unfortunate enough to be targeted by Kotelekyu faces a nearly inevitable demise. The combination of rapid paralysis and intense pain, coupled with potential systemic shock, makes its venomous attacks extraordinarily deadly. Kotelekyu lashes out with its tentacles, whipping them at Radnovich at near supersonic speed. Slowed by the toxin spreading throughout his bloodstream, the mountain of a man still manages to evade each of the creature's strikes. Despite the numbness creeping up his arm, Radnovich forces his body to move, his training and instincts kicking in as he ducks and weaves, narrowly avoiding the tentacles that whip through the air with deadly intent. Each movement is a credit to his willpower, as the toxin begins to disrupt his coordination and balance. He sidesteps a particularly vicious strike, feeling the rush of air as the tentacle passes mere inches from his face. His breathing is labored, each gasp for air coming with increasingly difficulty. The muscles around his throat tighten, and a cold sweat breaks out across his forehead. He can feel the toxin working its way through his system, his body temperature fluctuating wildly between feverish heat and icy chills. He wipes the sweat from his eyes, trying to keep his vision clear and focused on Kotelekyu's movements. Radnovich's heart pounds erratically, the venom interfering with his cardiac function. He feels the crushing pressure in his chest but pushes the pain aside, focusing on survival. Kotelekyu's glowing rings seem to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, a mocking reminder of the poison coursing through his veins. As another tentacle lashes out, Radnovich throws himself to the ground, rolling to evade the strike. He lands awkwardly, his limbs not responding as swiftly as they should. The numbness is spread from his arm to his torso, and he feels his muscles weakening. He grits his teeth, forcing himself to his feet, swaying slightly as he regains his balance. Kotelekyu senses his vulnerability and presses the attack, his tentacles flailing with renewed ferocity. Radnovich parries a strike with a wrench, the metal sparkling against the creature's rubbery skin. The force of the blow sends a jolt through his arm, intensifying the pain and numbness. He staggers back, gasping for breath. Each inhale a battle against the paralyzing grip of the toxin. Radnovich's vision blurs and he blinks rapidly, trying to clear the haze. The world around him spins and he feels a wave of dizziness wash over him. His movements become more erratic. His once precise dodges now desperate, flailing attempts to stay alive. He knows he can't keep this up for long. but its determination drives him to continue the fight. Another tentacle snaps towards him, and Rondovich twists his body, narrowly avoiding the lethal strike. He feels the brush of the tentacle against his clothing, a close call that sends a shiver down his spine. His right arm, still partially functional, moves almost on instinct, slashing at the tentacle to keep it at bay. The toxin's effects worsen, his breathing growing shallower and more labored. He can feel the paralysis spreading, his limbs growing heavier with each passing second. His thoughts become sluggish, the fog of the venom clouding his mind. Yet he refuses to succumb to the despair. His willpower the only thing keeping him standing. Rodnovich's muscles tremble with fatigue, the poison sapping his strength. "You are resilient for a human," Kodalaku says, observing Rodnovich's inability to stay down and accept defeat. "None of the others I have consumed were able to put up even close to as much of a fight as you." "I ain't like anybody else, fuckface," Rodnovich growls. "And I ain't getting taken out by whatever the fuck you are." "My toxins are already killing you. I don't have to do anything else other than stand back and watch you die." Kodalaku grins. "But what fun is that?" "Oh, you're just trying to have a good time then, huh?" Rodnovich grinds his teeth, trying to fight the pain and fatigue. "Why didn't you just say so?" Kodalaku lunges at Rodnovich with a flurry of tentacles, each one a blur of iridescent rings that shimmer menacingly in the fading light. Rodnovich, his vision narrowing and muscles protesting, ducks low, feeling the rush of air as a tentacle sweeps just over his head. He rolls to the side, gritting his teeth against the pain that shoots through his arm, the wound from the venomous bite throbbing with each heartbeat. The creature's wings buzz ominously as it takes to the air, hovering momentarily before diving at Rodnovich, with its stinger poised to strike. He twists his body awkwardly, nearly avoiding the lethal barb that plunges into the ground where he stood moments before. Kodalaku retracts its stinger and spins mid-air, preparing for another assault. Rodnovich, his breath coming in ragged gasps, forces his body to move. He sidesteps a tentacle, his legs feeling like lead, the numbness creeping higher. He swings his fist, aiming for Kodalaku's center mass, but his arm feels detached, the punch slow and weak. The creature easily evades the strike, its glowing eyes narrowing with cruel amusement. With a flick of its tentacle, Kodalaku lashes out again. Rodnovich barely manages to leap backward, stumbling as his legs give way momentarily. He crashes to the ground but quickly rolls onto his back to avoid another strike, the tentacle slamming into the earth beside him, sending up a spray of dirt and debris. Struggling to his feet, Rodnovich tries to regain his bearings. The world spins around him, his vision blurred and doubled. Kodalaku hovers above, its wings creating a haunting drone. It darts forward, tentacles outstretched. Rodnovich raises his arms defensively, feeling the sting as one of the tentacles brushes against his forearm. But he manages to push off the ground, using the momentum to roll away. As he rises, his knees buckle, the poison sapping his strength. Kodalaku, sensing his vulnerability, presses the attack. It swoops down, its stinger aimed at his chest. Rodnovich drops to the ground, the stinger grazing his shoulder and leaving a burning trail of pain. He grits his teeth, suppressing a cry of agony, and kicks out with his legs, trying to push the creature back. Rodnovich knows he needs to keep moving, to avoid the paralyzing touch of the tentacles and the deadly sting. He circles Kodalaku, his movements growing more erratic and uncoordinated. He feints to the left, then dodges right, narrowly avoiding a swipe from a tentacle. Each breath he takes is a battle, his chest tight with the strain of the toxin. Desperation fuels his next attack. He swings his arm slower than he intends, aiming for Kotokyu's wing. The creature anticipates the move, retracting its wing and countering with a swift strike from its tentacle. The blow catches Rodnovich in the side, sending him sprawling to the ground. Gasping for air as the toxin further weakens him. Rodnovich struggles to rise, his limbs trembling uncontrollably. He can still feel the paralysis setting in, but he refuses to give up. He forces himself to his feet, swaying as he tries to keep his balance. Kotoky circles him, its eyes glowing with predatory hunger. With a final burst of determination, Rodnovich throws himself at Kotoky, his fist aimed at the creature's head. The punch is slow, telegraphed, and Kotoky easily dodges it, wrapping a tentacle around Rodnovich's wrist and twisting painfully. Rodnovich grunts, pain shooting through his arm, but he fights against the restraint, his free hand clawing at the tentacle. Kotoky's wings buzz as it lifts slightly off the ground, pulling Rodnovich off balance. The creature's stinger strikes again, this time grazing his leg, the pain nearly overwhelming. Rodnovich's vision darkens at the edges, but he continues to struggle, his will to survive driving him forward, even as his body fails him. With every labored breath, Rodnovich struggled to shake off the effects of the deadly toxin coursing through his veins. But try as he might, he could feel his strength waning, his muscles growing sluggish and unresponsive as the poison continued to spread through his body like a creeping tide of darkness. Desperation clawed at Rodnovich's mind as he fought to stay conscious, his vision blurring and fading as he staggered backwards, his movements growing more and more erratic with each passing moment. The world seemed to spin around him. The once familiar sights and sounds of his yard now warped and distorted by the effects of the poison. But even in the grip of death's embrace, Rodnovich refused to surrender to the darkness that threatened to consume him. With every ounce of willpower he possessed, he forced himself to remain standing, his eyes burning with a fierce determination as he stared down at his foe. Rodnovich, teetering on the brink of unconsciousness, feels the encroaching darkness threatening to swallow him whole. In this moment of utter desperation, he reaches deep within himself, tapping into a well of dark energy that he has always kept hidden, even from those closest to him. This energy, black and terrible, surges through him, a force of both foreign and intimately familiar. The air around Rodnovich crackles with dark energy, the encroaching night growing quickly darker. Shadows seem to gather around him, drawing to the wellspring of power he had unleashed. His eyes snap open, now glowing with a sinister light, and a low, guttural growl escapes his lips. The ground beneath him trembles, responding to the surge of raw power. From his energy, a pair of black, shadowy wings begins to unfurl, not entirely physical, but more like manifestations of his inner darkness. They spread wide, creating an eerie silhouette against the sky. The wings pulse with energy, their edges shimmering and shifting as if made of the very essence of night. Rodnovich's entire body is enveloped in this dark aura. The paralysis from the toxin recedes, the numbness melting away like frost under the morning sun. Strength floods his limbs, his muscles bulging with newfound power. The pain that had racked his body only moments before is now a distant memory, replaced by a sense of invincibility. His breathing steadies deep and even as the energy fortifies his stamina. He feels lighter, faster, as if the very air around him bends to his will. His reflexes sharpen, the sluggishness that plagued him, banished by the dark energy coursing through his veins. As he rises to his feet, a fierce determination blazes in his eyes. The transformation is complete. Rodnovich stands taller, more imposing, the shadowy wings stretching out behind him like a dark angel of vengeance. His presence is overwhelming, radiating power and menace, a stark contrast to the weary man who had been on the very verge of defeat. Radonovich exhales sharply, steam escaping his lips. Kotlikiu leaps backward instinctively, the sensation of fear returning to him for the first time since the death of the souls that make up his essence. "Well, what are you?" the creature asks, trembling slightly. Why can I no longer sense your life energy?" "No one has pushed me to use this much of my power in ages," Radonovich whispers, his personality seemingly having changed to become more calm and rational. He's no longer boastful, arrogant, or quick-tempered. Radonovich rises, now a figure of dark power and resilience. His shadowy wings spread wide, casting an ominous silhouette against the moonlight. He feels a surge of strength, speed, and stamina coursing through his veins. The toxin's effects are temporarily nullified, and he stands ready to confront Kotlikiu with newfound vigor. From the man's hand, a blade of crackling black energy manifests. Kotlikiu, sensing the shift in Radonovich, hesitates for a moment before launching a flurry of tentacle strikes. Radonovich, now faster and more agile, dodges the first attack with ease, his movements fluid and precise. The tentacles whip through the air, but he evades each one, anticipating the creature's every move. Kotlikiu's stinger darts forward, aiming for Radonovich's heart. With a swift motion, he raises his arm, the shadowy wings behind him flexing as if ready to launch him into the air. He catches the stinger mid-thrust, his enhanced strength allowing him to hold it at bay. The creature struggles, but Radonovich's grip is unyielding. He twists his body, using the stinger's momentum to fling Kotlikiu to the side. Enraged, Kotlikiu disappears, blending into the environment. Radonovich stands still, his senses heightened, the dark energy coursing through him, sharpening his perception. He closes his eyes, focusing on the subtle disturbances in the air, the faintest whispers of movement. A tentacle lashes out from his left. Radonovich spins, his blade slicing through the air with precision, severing the appendage before it can reach him. Black ichor sprays from the wound, and Kotlikiu reappears momentarily, its camouflage flickering as it recoils in pain. Radonovich doesn't give the creature a chance to regroup. He lunges forward, his shadowy wings propelling him with incredible speed. He strikes with his energy blade, aiming for Kotlikiu's center mass. The blade plunges deep, and Kotlikiu screeches, its camouflage failing completely as it thrashes in agony. Kotlikiu's remaining tentacles whip towards Radonovich in a desperate attempt to fend him off. But he is ready, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to block and parry each strike with ease. He twists and turns, his movements a deadly dance of precision and power. The dark energy within him guides his every action, making him an unstoppable force. The creature's stinger darts towards him once more, but Radonovich is prepared. He sidesteps the attack, his wings unfurling to create a shield of darkness that deflects the stinger. In a fluid motion, he counters with a powerful kick, sending Kotlikiu sprawling backwards. With a primal roar of defiance, Radonovich summoned one final surge of energy, channeling the last reserves of his strength into a single powerful attack. With a mighty swing of his fist, he struck Kotlikiu's writhing form with all of the force he could muster, the impact sending shockwaves rippling through the air. The blow drives Kotlikiu downward, sinking the creature into a deep impact crater. Black gore leaks out from around the contact point. Impressions of Radonovich's knuckles still visible in Kotlikiu's skull. With superhuman ability, Radonovich hefted his vehicle off its blocks and brought the car down onto the head of the pseudo-infernal. The black energy and the calmness that came with it begins to fade as abruptly as it appeared, traces of Radonovich's rage and reckless abandon returning. Despite the loss of vanishing of his dark energy, Radonovich continues to display superhuman strength, still able to hold the automobile over his head with only moderate difficulty. The depths of the man's power have yet to be fully manifested. even after being pressed by the monstrous strength of the pseudo-infernal. "Fucking stupid calamari-ass bug motherfucker," Ronovich says, his voice echoing through the clearing, filled with raw, unbridled rage. Fueled by the energy coursing through his body, he lifts his car, the adrenaline and power making the impossible seem effortless. With a primal roar, he brings the vehicle crashing down onto Kolikyu's writhing form. The impact is devastating. The creature's newly regenerated body crumbles under the weight of the car, tentacles snapping and wings splintering. Ronovich doesn't stop. He lifts the car again and slams it down repeatedly, each strike accompanied by a furious shout. The ground shakes with each blow, the grass around them splattered with black ichor and fragments of Kolikyu's once formidable body. Tentacles are crushed into the earth, their blue ringed patterns smearing into the dirt. The shadowy wings are torn apart, their dark energy dissipating into the night air. Kolikyu's head is obliterated under the relentless assault. Ronovich's attacks reduce it to a pulp, black gore spraying with every impact. He doesn't stop until there is nothing left, just a formless mass of black ooze and shattered chitin. Finally, breathless and covered in sweat and ichor, Ronovich steps back, the dark energy still crackling around him but beginning to fade. He surveys the scene, his eyes narrowing at the remains. Kolikyu's head and torso are obliterated, reduced to a black gore covering the grass. Even with its impressive regenerative ability, it is obvious that the pseudo-infernal is no more. Ronovich drops the car beside the mess, his hands shaking as the adrenaline begins to wear off. He takes a deep breath, his rage subsiding, replaced by a weary satisfaction. Exhausted, the man falls back to his rear and lays down in the grass, staring up at the sky. "Shit," he mutters. "I'm still poisoned." With that, Damon Ronovich passes out. Provence, France. Ishef Drakovac opens his eyes from meditation as he senses a sudden shift in the dark energies all around him. Attuned to the spiritual, the necromancer can sense movements and changes in the immaterial plane much earlier than their physical effects can be seen or felt. As the dimensional wound tears open from the Yetzirah to release the pseudo-infernal Akkad into the world of the living, Ishef is already fully aware of his coming. Using blood magic, the necromancer quickly scrawls a binding circle on the ground below the tear, immediately trapping Akkad the moment he appears. "You are a strange creature," Ishef mutters in intrigue. "Revenant, yet not. Your spirit is far too young to be a blaspheme. I can sense you have been dead only for a few days." He pauses. "Wait, you are many. A collection of souls all forced together by dark magic. What exactly are you?" "I am a Akkad," the creature growls, unable to move on its own. "You have higher sentience than other lesser dead, and you are self-aware enough to have a name. I have happened upon a rare find indeed. You came from the Yetzirah?" Akkad continues to growl and struggle against the binding spell. "If you are undead, you will find that my spell cannot be broken. The seal of Dzivaru binds any spirit outside of a mortal body to the spellcaster by blood. You are now my servant." "Never. I serve only the King in the Dark." Ishef's interest is piqued. "The King in the Dark? I have not come across that name before. Is this king the same as you, revenant but not?" The king is so much more. We are imitations of the De Inferni, only created in his image. The De Inferni, Isheth whispers. I shall have to learn more about them. I will tell you nothing. Isheth chuckles. I can compel you to tell me everything. And I will. Brighton, Florida. Reacting to the movements and the attack patterns of your enemies is only one part of effectively combating a supernatural entity, Alyssa explains. Their energy is different, and you must be able to detect the difference before a battle even begins. Sometimes your enemy isn't going to be advertising what they are, Bernard adds. Their appearance may be suppressed or altered by magic. The energy of their spiritual being is much harder to change. Knowing the identity of your opponent early is a key factor in being able to mount an appropriate strategy. Jake nods. I can already differentiate between human and Sakari, the only full breeds like Huyin and Yana. I can tell something's off about tainted bloods, but not enough to instantly recognize them. I can also sense the angel Cedrion whenever he is near. It's an oppressive feeling, like a late summer heat with 100% humidity. It's hard to breathe. Each energy has its own tells. You must become attuned to those subtle changes, Alyssa says. Vampire, Therian, Demon, Bernat continues. Before we leave for Jockey, you must be able to tell the difference between each of these monsters immediately. We don't have a lot of time left, Jake says. Are you sure we can accomplish all of that? It has to be done, Bernat says. You don't have any other choice other than to succeed. If you can't get past the other combatants on the island, you will never get your chance to face Hui one-on-one. Jake redoubles his focus, putting all of the pressure upon himself to succeed. Failure is not an option. He knows that he's going to jockey, to win the entire tournament. Losing even a single fight will mean death. The stakes are too high to give anything else than his all in preparation, as he would regret having not given that extra bit of sweat and blood to succeed, were he to come up short. Jake pauses, sensing a shift in the air around them. I know that energy, he whispers. It's slightly different, but I could tell that from any lineup. Alyssa nods, drawing her sword. I sense it too. A revenant is hunting us.